One thing that is pursued often in life today is the idea of generational wealth. The concept of, well, I'm going to be so rich, I'm going to have so much money that none of my kids will really have to work. I'm going to be so successful, I'm going to teach them finances maybe, that they will be able to take what I have done and be able to succeed for the rest of their life and just have lots and lots of money, okay? Now, I don't know if there's something you have experience with. It's certainly not something I have experience with. Thanks, Dad. But here, Solomon, in the end of chapter 2, I don't know if I'm necessarily saying he is speaking of generational wealth, but just the fact that what you do is going to be left for somebody after you, right? There's going to be somebody else who comes along, and that's what he dealt with a lot in the last chapter, right? You're going to die, whether you're wise or whether you're a fool. Not last chapter, but last section. You're going to die, and so you're going to have to leave your work, your really identity, in the hands of someone else. And Solomon is explaining the evil of losing your work to the next person. And really, if we're going to look at really what the application is, what the end game is, then is that we should work, eat, and enjoy. Work, eat, and enjoy. And that's what Solomon says. Well, I'm Pastor Sai, and this is the Rooted Project. The goal is to keep you rooted in Scripture and ready for life. God has given us His Word for more than just head knowledge, but has given us His Word for application, for holy living. And we're just kind of slow walking through the book of Ecclesiastes, seeing what God has for us from the life of Solomon, or from the wisdom of Solomon, I should say. And we have covered all the way here to the middle of chapter 2, so we're not very far in if you're joining us just now. And we just talked about how everyone's going to die. Solomon says at the last chapter, the last section again, that everyone's going to die. Whether you're a wise man, whether you're foolish, you're going to die. And it's quite a good happy note for this morning. And so we need to serve God and be forgotten. And now he kind of gets into the next section, and he says, therefore, right, because everyone's going to die, therefore I hated life, because the work that was done under the sun was distressing to me, for all is vanity and grasping at the wind. And really, this could have gone in with the last section, right? Everyone's going to die. Everyone is life is pointless. Work is pointless in and of itself. And yet, we still have to work. You're grasping for the wind. And then he says in verse 18, then I hated all of my life, because the work that was done under the sun. Oh, sorry, I just read that. I hated all my labor in which I had toiled under the sun, because I must leave it to the man who will come after me. So I don't know what exactly Solomon is thinking of here. But it's true, right? We don't like to leave behind our babies, right? Obviously not our physical children, but we don't like to. It's kind of hard to let go of things in our life that we have worked hard on or dealt with. If you've crafted some piece of art, or if you have worked very hard on building a program or building something that is successful, and then it's time for you to move on, or somebody else comes in and you really need to give that up, it's hard to get rid of that sometimes, right? Because you've spent time on it, you've toiled on it. And so Solomon here says, I'm going to die, and I really hate the fact that I'm going to have to give it to some numbskull after me and hope that he can handle it right. He's like, I don't think this is fair. I hate this. It's not great. Verse 19, and who knows whether he will be wise or he'll be a fool? Yet he will rule over all my labor, in which I toiled, and in which I have shown myself wise under the sun. This is Solomon's favorite word, vanity. Leaving all of this stuff behind for the next generation, leaving all of this work, all of these things I'm trying to build success with behind, it's vanity. It's pointless. It's empty. Because I don't know how they're going to act. Right? You can do as good a job as you want training the next generation, and you still don't know how they're going to act or what's going to happen. Therefore, I turned my heart and despaired of all the labor which I had toiled under the sun. For there is a man whose labor is with wisdom, knowledge, and skill. Yet he must leave his heritage, or really his portion, that's the thought, his heritage or his portion to a man who has not labored for it. This is vanity. And it's not just vanity. He calls it a great evil. And so there's an aspect as we seek to build generational wealth for the next generation, or we seek to provide for our children, parents, or even children as we seek to provide for our future selves, or even look ahead to the future. There's an aspect where we need to be willing to do the work, but also to have other people earn the work, to have other people earn what they're getting. It's here described as a great evil that this is going to a person who hasn't worked for it. For, he explains why in verse 22, for what has man for all of his labor, and for the striving of his heart, with which he toiled under the sun? For all his days are sorrowful, and his work burdensome, and even in the night his heart takes no rest. And so Solomon's like, stop storing up things, right? Because working is sorrowful, it is burdensome, and it gives no rest. You're striving for all these things, you're working for all these things, and you're never going to experience the joys, the fruits, the happiness that comes from your work in the first place when you simply are worried about storing things and putting them up and gaining possessions as opposed to enjoying God's gifts, as opposed to enjoying what God has provided for you. And really that's what Solomon is saying. He said, stop storing up things. You're going to have to leave it to the next guy anyway. And work is sorrowful. It is burdensome. And there is really no rest. And rest is something this generation, or the past generation, I should say, for me, struggles with. You're supposed to kind of buckle down, pull yourself by your bootstraps and work. It's almost like I was saying the other day, sickness sometimes is God's way of telling us we can't do it. It's reminding us that we're frail and weak and we need to take a break. And Solomon is saying, like, when you work hard, when you are simply worried about storing possessions, you don't have any rest. And you might take a nap at night. You might think you're having this joy, but really you're being burdened down. Really you're not resting when you're simply storing things up and not enjoying what God has given you. And then it says this in verse 27, and in my Bible, I use colors. And so whenever it's something you're supposed to do, like an application, I put it in orange. And I have this in orange. Nothing is better for man than he should eat and drink, and that his soul should enjoy good in his labor. This also, and this is in blue, because for me, something from God or a promise from God or a gift from God is in blue. This also I saw was from the hand of God. For who can eat, or who can have enjoyment more than I? For God gives wisdom and knowledge and joy to a man who is good in his sight. So basically Solomon says, yeah, you can store things up, you can do the work, but it's much better. And I'm not even saying that you shouldn't prepare for the future, or you shouldn't prepare to give your kids a gift in the future. But he's saying that it's far better to enjoy your labor. That's why some people talk about being partaking in the first fruits in ministry, right? Getting in God's word, learning from it for yourself, and then ministering out of that overflow. Being able to enjoy what God has given you as a gift. And he says it's from the hand of God that people enjoy their labor. It is really a gift, we'll talk about in chapter 3, to work and to have things to enjoy. And so then he says, God gives wisdom and knowledge and joy to a man who's good in his sight. So really he's starting to talk about getting right with God. It is wise to work and to be right with God. All of us have sinned, right? All of us are in some way wrong with God. Maybe we're wrong with God in the way that we are taking and searching for pleasure and joy in our work and in our possessions. That would not be being right with God, right? Maybe we are wrong with God in the way that we are vain, or we are seeking things for ourselves. Maybe we just get down to the moral law things, right? Breaking the commandments. All of us are not right with God in some way before salvation. And he says, but to the sinner, someone who's not right, the work of gathering and collecting that he may give to them who is good before God. This is also vanity and grasping for the wind. And so there's an aspect where when you're not living right with God, you're going to constantly be working. There's not going to be joy in your work. There's not going to be satisfaction in your work. But it'll just be another day where you get up, you go to the office, and you work for someone else. You have no purpose in your life because your purpose is separate when you're not with God. And yet, when you are with God, you're doing the job he has for you, you're working, and you're enjoying the fruits of that labor. There is happiness, there is knowledge, and there is wisdom. And so we need to be working, eating, and enjoying the fruits of our work. You see, work is a good thing. I think our society, I know our society has, and this isn't new with me, this concept or this thought, but our society thinks that work is bad, and everything we're doing is working for the opportunity to stop working, right? We save up for retirement, we save up for the future, and yet God ordained work in the Garden of Eden, right? He has given us jobs to do. He wants us to serve him. He wants us to work. And so working and being right with God is what brings joy. it will bring fulfillment. It will bring happiness. But when you're working outside of God for yourself, that is where the struggles, the lack of contentment, that is where it comes from. And this is true for both believer and unbeliever. Because a believer should know better, and yet you can be right with God positionally and wrong and searching for your own goods, your own satisfaction, and never find it. So work, eat, and enjoy the Lord today. Thanks. See you in the next one.